New York are. But here in Florida, we've started opening up. We're in phase one. So I got my nails done and my hair. We still go into a store with our masks on. So we're still learning to deal with this pandemic. But I do know the number of cases have gone way down and the number of deaths have gone down too. So I hope we're still washing our hands, saying the Our Father, and doing all those good things that we've learned now, that these are going to be best practices that will be with us for a while. And I think the time will come, maybe in about another month or so, where we'll be able to not have to walk around with masks too. So, we're all just being patient, and I know everyone is clamoring for their life to return to normal, right? They don't want to call this the new normal. I think they hate that phrase, the new normal. So we're still bringing you the programs here on the internet at endabortion.tv, and of course a whole bunch of other platforms. So however you're joining us, thank you for tuning in. And I hope you tune in also every morning at 10 a.m. Father Pavone does the Mass every day, and he's going to continue to do that until churches open all over the country. I know this coming weekend, there will be some churches opening, but there's so many places where churches still do not have Mass. So Father does Mass for you on the internet every morning at 10 a.m. and it repeats in the evening at 6. So today we went back again into our archives to our shows we produced for Sky Angel called The Gospel of Life. A kind of rare treat today. We interviewed Pat Boone, the famous singer. And some of you might say, well, what the heck, Janet, did you interview Pat Boone for? Well, because he is proudly pro-life. And Father and I thought it was terrific to show someone who is a famous singer, who was on television, did movies, and he's not afraid and does not shy away from his pro-life position. So let's watch this beautiful show from The Gospel of Life with Pat Boone.
Next on Gospel of Life, a conversation with Pat Boone. Hello, I'm Father Frank Pavone, Director of Gospel of Life Ministries. Welcome to our program. We're joined by our Associate Director, Janet Morena, and today we have a very great privilege and honor to have a friend of the pro-life movement, a friend of the unborn, a friend of America, a man with a great, long, distinguished career and a great example of what it means to love one's country, one's family, one's God. We are joined today by phone by Mr. Pat Boone. Pat, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Brother Frank. I consider you my brother.
Thank you. Well, it is sure a joy to have you here with us today for a few moments. And we just want to, first of all, thank you for all that you've done over the years for America, for so many people who have been inspired by you, by your singing, by your just the stands that you've taken, and in particular to thank you for your stand for the unborn child. This has been an important part of your life and your values for a long time, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. It may not surprise you, certainly, or anybody listening or watching, but I was once a baby myself. And I suspect that anybody within eye or earshot of us right now will have to admit that he or she was an embryo, was a fetus in the womb, and because our mothers allowed us to come to delivery and into the light of day, we live now. And I'm afraid that truth is just overlooked so many times because the PR campaign for what's called pro-choice, and it's really pro-abortion, obfuscates that. They try to make you think that there's just some unformed tissue. It's not a human being. But when you realize each of us was in that very state, if we exist now, we existed in that state before. I mean, it came clear to me many years ago, and I've just been so appalled that so many of the American people can be swept along with this rhetoric pro-choice. What is that choice? I always ask. Oh, it's the whether let another human being live or die. Oh, that's the choice.
Yes, yes, pretty fundamental. I remember you telling the story about your daughter Debbie and the baby in the bottle experience that she came home with one day. Tell us how that impacted you and your family.
Well, it sure did. It was a searing. You know how you brand a cow, and you stick this brand into its hip, maybe, or flank, and there forever will be that brand. Well, we were branded pro-life by that experience because Debbie came home from school red-eyed and shaken, and we said, "What's the matter, honey?" And she said, "Daddy, Mommy, there was a baby in a bottle at school." We said, "What are you talking about?" Well, it was an exhibit, a science exhibit, but in this bottle, in some liquid that looked like a pickle in brine, was a little baby. And she started crying again. And she said, "We saw its eyelids and its fingers and its toes, and it was just curled up in this bottle, but in this liquid." And she could hardly keep talking enough without crying, to explain what she had seen. And she said, "Daddy, they called it a fetus, but it's a baby." And so, you know, Shirley and I hadn't really paid the issue a whole lot of attention at that point, because we had 4 kids in 3.5 years, and we're glad to have each one and loved each one. And so we lost a couple in miscarriages, but we hadn't focused on what would we do if one of our daughters eventually came home pregnant. What would we do? What would our stance be? And so at that point, we said, girls, because we shared this in our family group with all 4 daughters, there is a possibility, and we hope it won't happen, but when one of these days you might make a wrong choice and wind up with a baby in you, and I want you to know, you need to know, that you've seen now firsthand with your own eyes what's in your womb, in your stomach, and that child has the right to live and not to be pickled and put in a bottle for an exhibit.
Yes.
And so that settled it for every one of us, all 6 of us. And of course, we've stayed with that. And we see no other humane alternative.
Exactly.
You know, well, Mr. Boone, I know how proudly pro-life you've been over the years. I know I've met you at the National Right to Life conventions, and as a matter of fact, you have a new book out, and in one of the pages, I love to see that you participated in a life chain over in London, holding that sign, "Abortion Kills Children." I don't think a lot of people realize that, not just being a person in Hollywood, but you have boldly come out all these years and been proudly pro-life.
Yes, and because to me it's just pro-humanity. I mean, for a human race to be willing to sacrifice its own young and millions and millions over the last few years is so barbaric, so inhumane. I understand each situation is different, and with 4 daughters and now 10 granddaughters, I understand the dilemma that a woman is in. But no matter what country, no matter what the culture or anything, there's a human being. There are 2 people involved at least. Certainly the biological father should be involved, but the mother and the child definitely are. And so the solutions have to involve the lives of both, I think, and it seems obvious to me that that's the case. I keep praying for the optical illusion, you know, that thing where you're looking at shadows and lines and you see a picture before your eyes quite clearly, and then while you're looking at it, same lines, same shadows, but suddenly you see a different picture.
Yes,
It's called an optical illusion, and I keep praying that as people look at this issue of abortion and life, and they see the dilemma that a mother, a woman is in, and an unwanted, unplanned pregnancy, that they will suddenly have, and they're empathetic, but they'll have that optical flip which allows them to see there's another human being involved, and they need to be just as empathetic for that child as they are for the mother. And there are humane solutions.
Yes.
Well, I just briefly mentioned your book, Mr. Boone, but I've begun to read through it, and it's called Pat Boone's America 50 Years, Your Autobiography. Would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about it in your own words?
Well, sure. I thank you for that. When I was first approached by the publisher, I thought, well, hey, look, I've written other books. All my books are in some ways autobiographical. And there's been a lot of wonderful things that have happened, and some I've never talked about. But I wasn't sure who would be interested, and I didn't want to go to all the trouble. And it is a lot of work to write a book, and I did. And then come up with 200 pictures that have been in our own private files all these times. But what convinced me was the realization that I could talk about our life and our family, my career and all that, and along the way drop in inserts to share with people about the changes that have been taking place in that same 50-year span of my life and career as an entertainer. But the way America has been changing, and we're letting things precious to us be just taken away, and we're letting things be inflicted on us by militant little minority groups and with good PR campaigns and funding, and we're just too busy or too apathetic to get concerned and say, wait a minute, we want to keep the culture that we grew up in. We want to keep the traditions and the morals that made America who we are. We will not allow ourselves to be virtually genetically re-engineered into something different. But so I had a chance to, in a way, gently, I hope, get on a soapbox and talk about America, what America's been going through the last 50 years, and not just Pat Boone and his family.
Mm-hmm. It is a beautiful book. I really encourage our listeners, our viewers, to get hold of this book. It's inspiring. Your life has taken you in front of many people, and I know that those who read this book, and I mean, just paging through, looking at those pictures is. It's a lesson, as I said in the introduction, in the love of our God and of our country, and want to thank you for putting this book together.
Well, I'm very proud of it now, and it's a coffee table type thing where people can, the picture on the cover was the picture that ran on the cover of the Rolling Stone many years ago. The only time I was on the cover of that magazine. Again, they and I have drifted apart somehow.
Uh-huh.
and on the back is a great big blow-up picture of my white bucks, which that particular pair, my wife had made into a lampstand because I'd worn it until they had gotten pretty worn, as you can see. But when you pull the light switch, the light fell on this pair of shoes, these white buck shoes, which had become sort of a trademark and identification for me. And I still wear them, and people remember, and so I just thought, well, hey, I'm the Pat Boone that whose records you may have bought, whose movies you may have seen, whose television shows you've watched, but I'm also an American who's been living through the same times you have, and I want us to share some concerns about what kind of a society we're about to hand to our kids and our grandkids. Is it as good? Is it as wholesome as the one we were given, or have we let it be corrupted almost beyond recognition? And what are we going to do about it?
Right. It's a call to take responsibility, a call to take action in a godly way, and we certainly thank you for that. Just as we conclude here, how is your family doing?
Oh, boy, the family, well, everybody really is doing well. I started to say with the possible exception of our grandson, Ryan, but actually he's doing very well, too.
Good.
He was the one who was hurt so badly 6 years ago, falling through the skylight of a apartment building in West L.A.
Yes.
He shared an apartment with two of his buddies from Pepperdine. But he's getting better day by day. It's slow, but steady, and he's way beyond anything neurosurgeons or doctors or experts thought was possible. So God is answering our prayers. We want people to keep praying for Ryan, but he is coming back to us. He's being restored cell by cell and memory by memory, and he's got a sense of humor, and we can get him up on his 2 feet, and with support, he's walked as many as 40 steps. So he's getting use of his limbs, and certainly he's got his memory and his mental faculties, and you know, it was the brain that was injured. So I'm saying a mouthful here. Those things are monumental, miraculous.
Yes. Well, ever since that accident happened, we have been praying for him and, of course, for you and for the whole family. And so we're very glad to hear about that progress.
Well, thanks for the praying, and I hope you'll keep doing it, because it's obvious God is answering those prayers.
Yes. Well, good. Well, thanks again for being with us. Any special projects that you have on your plate right now that you're particularly looking forward to in the days ahead?
Oh, yeah. I've got a tribute to Billy Graham that I produced, wrote a song called Thank You, Billy Graham. And we did the music video, and a lot of people participated, just like a We Are the World type thing, a tribute to Billy. Bono of U2 and Larry King says some lines about Billy that I wrote. Even though he says he's an agnostic, he wrote the true lines about Billy and his ministry, and Kenny Rogers, Leanne Rimes, Michael McDonald, Andre Crouch, the Christian group DC Talk, Jeffrey Osborne, of course I myself, a lot of us, and so that project is out there. And if you go to patsgold.com or even patboone.com, you know, we can let you hear and see that tribute, but proceeds from it are going to Samaritan's Purse, which is Franklin Graham's wonderful humanitarian organization, and also Mercy Corps, a similar one. And then there's also a tribute to the military, the National Guard, called For My Country, the Ballad of the National Guard. And that, too, is a song, a music video ready for television, and a documentary of the National Guard, their 370-year history. And there are a few other things, but I won't burden you with all of them.
Well, Pat, I want to thank you again for everything that you've done. We look forward to continued contact with you, and just God bless you and your family. Thanks again for your strong stand for life, without which, of course, we couldn't enjoy any of these other blessings.
That's right. We need to all be defenders and promoters of life. So God bless you. You do that.
Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye now. And brothers and sisters, we will be right back. Stay with us.